I've got a lot of people that I would consider to be, of sound mind that feel like 9-3 would be a good season. And I find that interesting. I think when you brought DJ in, you did not bring DJ in to go 9-3. I think you brought DJ in so that your floor would be 10-2. Your floor.
Well, it's not just DJ. It's you invest in Malik Benson, all the defensive linemen that you brought in, the 2 SEC guards that you bring in. I mean, like you went for it. It's the safeties you bring in. I could keep going on. Earl Little, Cam Riley. Like, you don't do that to go 9-3. To me, this is a year where the trenches should pave the way for you. I was talking to my dad yesterday about it, and he said, "So what do you think?" I said, "Well, for the first time in 4 years, this is a group that I watch in camp, and I say it's not as good as its predecessor. It's just not."
Yeah.
But how could you be? He goes, "Really?" I said, "Well, yeah. I mean, they did go 13-0 last year with myriad injuries, so that's a really high bar to clear or match. We've done it before. In 13 and 14, we went 13-0. We were ACC champions. Like, they did it very different ways, but it can be done." The one thing I would say is the trenches should put us in position to be in every game. They should, because I think we're really good. At least the starting group on both sides is really good. I think the depth is quite good on the offensive line, and the defensive line, it could be as well. So if you don't have as many studs at skill positions on offense, you should still, if you just run a basic play on first down, be in 2nd and 7 or 2nd and 6. You should still, if you're in 2nd and 6, be in 3rd and 3 because you run a basic play, a basic running play. So I would agree with you. You bring in a ton of new pieces to this roster that are all veteran, that are in that money year, and you're going for it in a sense. You don't go for it and go 9-3 and call it a success. I'm sorry, you just don't.
That's the point I was making. They could go 9-3 and it wouldn't be a disaster, but their actions in the offseason tell me that they were trying to avoid an 8-4 or 9-3 season. They chose, by bringing in the people that they did, not to have the temporary setback for the sake of development. Now, you could have just started this season with Brock Glenn. You could have said, okay, we're going to go with Brock. But when you start a new quarterback, somebody that's never been the starting quarterback, I understand he was thrust into action in really, really untenable situations. And that's not fair to him. But this would have been, in earnest, his starting job, right? He would have won this job, we think. And because of that, you're going to lose a couple of games where he makes the kind of mistakes that quarterbacks who are green make. This is what happens. There's a learning curve to playing big-time college football. And when you're a quarterback and it's your first year starting and you've got to play Clemson's defense, Notre Dame's defense on the road, Miami's defense on the road, I mean, those games alone, you would have seen some hiccups, I do believe. And so you were probably going to brace for an 8-4 type campaign. But somewhere in there, they realized, you know what? We've got enough coming back, and there's enough out there in the portal, and we've got real momentum off of that 13-0 season. We don't have to take a step back. We got a little lucky, guys. Alabama's legendary head coach just retired. There's a free-for-all for their roster. Let's see if we can't go bring in 3 or 4 of their players. Let's go grab that kid who just entered the portal from LSU, who's a burner, and see if we can't get him at a reasonable number, And all of a sudden, those people said yes. Those numbers worked out, and you did bring them in. And once you did that, you changed what your expectations were. And I think that their thought was, we want to back up the 13-0 with something akin to that. Maybe it's unreasonable to say that we're just going to go undefeated every year, but certainly you made these moves to win the ACC championship again.
Yeah, agreed. If you brought in a bunch of Jalen Browns, though, they're outside of the redshirt year, it's a different thing than bringing in a Marvin Jones Jr., Durajaye, Lolohea, Richie Leonard, Jalen Lucas, Malik Benson, Roydell Ferguson, Devontae Brown. I mean, like, you're bringing in players that are upperclassmen. So the upperclassmen sends a different message than a bunch of redshirt freshmen that you're looking for long-term development out of. And there are some transfers that you do want to bring in because we missed on them on the trail. But if we can develop them, then this is going to be a long-term win for us. That's great. Like, anything Keziah Holmes provides this year is from that latter category. They brought him in knowing that it's for tomorrow. It's not for now. A lot of these transfers they brought in are for today. And when I listed all those guys, I didn't list DJU because that one is obvious. That's obvious. So, yeah, I agree that the question is, when you define success, it gets a little bit interesting. Is getting to Charlotte, whether you win or you lose, a successful season? Is getting to Charlotte and missing the playoff? You know, you lose the ACC championship game, you go 11-2, and you're out because the Invitational wants Ole Miss at 8-4 to get in there instead. Like, how would you define success? Is it zero sum? You must win the ACC championship, therefore you're in the playoff, or you must make the playoff, whether you win the ACC or not, at large or conference champion, don't care. You have to get into the playoff field for this to be a successful season. That to me is more interesting than a record discussion. But even still, if you want to have the record discussion, you got to win 10 games this year, minimum. Got to. And I'm talking out of the 12-game slate. I'm not talking unless you have myriad injuries, which we all allow for. 10-2 is the minimum here, man.
It's hard to say that 10-2 is the minimum with as much production as you lost last year, but I agree with you because of what you did just decide to bring in. I also think having more than a functional offensive line, but rather a really good offensive line. I talked with somebody yesterday in the game, played the game, knows the game, and we were going through position groups, and his contention was that Florida State's offensive, he had heard you and I talking about the offensive line and where we thought they ranked. And I, my whole diatribe the other day where I said, okay, I'm trying to compare us constantly to Georgia, who I think is the preeminent program in college football right now. And I said, I go segment by segment when I do that. And I was trying to grade out based on returning starters, number of players that are preseason All-Americans, all-conference, whatever it might be. I was trying to grade out where Florida State was in comparison to the elite teams in college football. And I went through here and saw, let's see, his assessment, mine assessment, back and forth in a text. Yeah, so he said, look, I think Georgia's offensive line, no-brainer, better than Florida State's. Agreed. And so do the NFL scouts. I mean, that's one of the things that you do. Just go look at the sites that project players and where they're going to get drafted. And you can look at an LSU offensive line. You can look at a Georgia offensive line. You can look at an Alabama offensive line. You can look at maybe Oklahoma State. A lot of people feel very highly about two of their guys, Notre Dame, a couple of their guys, but their left tackle just got lost for the year. And he was one of those guys that projects to be really high up there. So as I went through all of this, I realized that, golly, that puts us at like the 6th or 7th best offensive line in the country, Tom. If you have the 6th or 7th, okay, let's go worst case scenario. Call them the 10th. A lot of people think Tennessee's offensive line is better. Okay, Florida State is the 10th best offensive line, worst case scenario in the country this year, projected.
Yeah.
You better win 10 games with a top 10 offensive line.
If you're going to have a badass defense on top of it, yeah.